So what he has had to do is to deal with the most venomous, poisonous, absolutely uh, disastrous inheritance ever received by any government in the world. So it's very easy to talk of this from a from I don't know, from any of our countries that have a relatively stable currency and a relatively orthodox type of monetary policy. What we have to remember is the inheritance.
Buy my novel, Escape from the Village, from major booksellers online. Go to escapevillage.com. Subscribe to the Substack. Go to fountainheadforum.substack.com. Support the forum. Go to buymeacoffee.com/fountainheadforum. Thank you. Welcome to the party, pal. This is Fountainhead Forum 269, and I have Daniel Lacalle back on. He is a Spanish economist who has known Javier Milei for several years. We're going to talk about Javier Milei's first year in office, and he's we've now had, I believe, 12 or 13 months of budget surpluses, and we're going to respond to this tweet from Saifedean Ammous. Saifedean, of course, is author of the Bitcoin Standard, Austrian economist. It's somewhat critical of Milei's first year. We think this deserves a response, and if Saifedean ever wants to come on my show sometime, he's certainly welcome. He's does a lot for the Bitcoin community, and he's got some good insights himself. But sometimes people can be wrong too. So, how are you, Daniel?
Very well, thank you very, very much. I'm really, really excited to be back here again. Always a pleasure.
Well, it's great that a busy man like yourself can find time for this show. I'm always grateful. I've met so many amazing people, and Milei is just everybody loves to talk about Milei. You can understand why. This is going to be the 66th show I think I've done about Milei, so it's the second time you've been on. So okay, yeah, let's go over this tweet then. First of all, what's been your assessment of just on a personal note? What's your assessment so far? I mean, you've known Milei for what, 10 years or something like that?
Yeah, absolutely, yes. I knew that he was not going to negotiate the key elements of his economic plan, and that he would implement drastic measures from the first moment. So I was quite optimistic that, because that was something that was going to happen regardless of the challenges at an institutional and political level, I was quite optimistic of the possibilities for the Argentine economy to improve. However, I was also at least cautious, because the disaster in which the Argentine economy was exceedingly difficult to solve. And so we have to understand the inheritance, and we have to understand it precisely because of tweets like the one that you have shared with me. Because people seem to believe that uh, an economy changes immediately, just because the president arrives. Well, once measures started to be implemented, we saw a very, very drastic change, and I think that that is the key factor. The key factor here. So think about this: Millet inherits a monthly level of inflation of 25%. The level of extreme poverty in Argentina was about 20%. The level of headline poverty was about 50%. The economy was in shambles, and it was already in a contraction with very aggressive inflation. In 1 year, number one, what he achieved was an absolute record of the first year of fiscal surplus from the get go in the moment they arrived, which in turn meant less money printing, which in turn meant lower inflation, and monthly inflation fell from 25% to below 3%, and a reduction in poverty that meant that in less than a year, the level of poverty in Argentina was lower than what the administration of Mr. Fernandez and the administration of Ms. Kirchner left. Furthermore, the economy was already growing on the third quarter of 2024, which means ultimately that the elements that we are trying to get together are working very, very well because of very aggressive, drastic measures of deregulation, uh, free market, and reducing the imbalances of the government. Now, people want to criticize. Well, to be fairly honest, they need to be in power for 12 months and prove that they can achieve these kind of record figures in 12 months. But if we look at this dishonest tweet that was published by this person in terms of money supply growth, um, if you think about it, what he is showing is a number of things. Number one, he is showing money supply growth from November, when he knows that the administration of Mr. Milei arrived and really did not start implementing its measures until January. Of course, you would say, well, who cares money supply growth in November versus January? Well, I do, because the difference between November and January, in a period in which the previous government was creating monthly 25.5% inflation, means that a couple of months of, let's say, non-Milei money supply growth immediately is assuming very elevated levels of money supply growth. In fact, if you look at the same graph that he is publishing, what he is actually showing is that from the moment that Milei started to implement the drastic cuts in public spending, money supply growth immediately grinds to a halt. That's obviously the reason why inflation drops from 25 monthly percent, 25.5 monthly percent, to 2.7% monthly. Is it possible to immediately stop money supply growth uh, uh, to virtually zero? Obviously not, because anyone that understands money supply understands a number of things in Argentina. Number one, money supply growth includes the level of money supply that comes from the remunerated debt that the central bank has already issued, i.e., the central bank with the Peronist government was issuing remunerated debt that effectively meant more money supply growth in the future, regardless of anybody else's policies. What this tweet is completely ignoring is the fact that the central bank that Milei inherited had negative net reserves of more than $12 billion. And therefore, this time bomb inherited by Milei of a central bank that was not just printing like there's no tomorrow because government spending was out of control, but it was also printing like there's no tomorrow because it was, let's say, hiding its enormous money printing also with delayed money printing, i.e., with these LELIQs, passes, what they are called, these remunerated debts. So it's very disingenuous to blame Milei for the inheritance of a central bank that they have started to mend. And the way in which a government can start to mend is obviously to try to do it in a way that doesn't bring the economy to a complete disaster immediately. No? It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
No? So, what he did was obviously first stop the bleeding, which was government spending. Stop the bleeding, deficit spending, go to a surplus. That means less money printing. Number two, start to replenish slowly and as the process at which they can do it, those reserves, so that the central bank goes from having negative net reserves to slowly grows positive reserves. It still has negative net reserves. That's why Milei has not been able yet to shut down the central bank and dollarize, because it's very easy to say, oh, the money supply growth is continuing to grow very, very rapidly. That's not to blame on Milei, and he knows it. More importantly, he should know it. It is so disingenuous that anybody that looks at the central bank of Argentina huh, thinks that inheriting a time bomb of the magnitude of all of that remunerated debt, that at every time that remunerated debt, very short term at extremely elevated rates, matures, the central bank prints money to pay for it. So money supply growth has absolutely nothing to do with Milei's policy. Milei is not printing. What Milei is doing is, without destroying the banking system, because he could have defaulted obviously on the central bank's remunerated debt and brought the country to an absolute disaster of not just financial crisis, but a hyperinflation very, very short term. What he's basically doing is deflate that time bomb that he inherited. So this is what this person should have done with this graph. What he should have done should have been the following. This is the inheritance that Milei received in the central bank. A central bank with a time bomb of more than $12 billion US dollars, and a total time bomb of about $25 billion of both ongoing money supply growth plus the remunerated debt. And once you take that into account, and then you see what has been money supply growth relative to all of that inheritance, he should have deducted it. And if he had deducted it, those figures that this person shows would have shown what inflation has already shown. If it is so ridiculous, this tweet that you're sharing with us, that if that was the case, inflation would have not gone from 25% to 2.7% monthly. It would have gone from 25% monthly to 50% monthly. You see what I mean? So what he has had to do is to deal with the most venomous, poisonous, absolutely disastrous inheritance ever received by any government in the world. So it's very easy to talk of this from I don't know, from any of our countries that have a certain relatively stable currency and a relatively orthodox type of monetary policy. What we have to remember is the inheritance. So I come back to the point. If you look at the inheritance of the central bank and the time bomb inherited from remunerated debt, what you can see is that with Mr. Milei, money supply growth has actually been contained massively, and that's why inflation has come down so fast, and also, and more importantly, why the exchange rate, the official exchange rate of the peso, and the real rate of the peso, the market rate of the peso, have actually converged.
Yeah, we're definitely seeing some progress here, with the exchange rate. I mean, just looking at the Argentine peso, for example, versus say the euro, it's about, well, it was, went from, I mean, still about, well, I got to reverse this, but yeah, it means it's still, I mean, we have some inflation, but it's not nearly like it was. I mean, just like
We have
when,
of
yeah,
course, Argentina continues to have a lot of inflation. Absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely. But the thing is that people, people in this sort of PowerPoint way of looking at things, and this Excel spreadsheet economy that some people live in,
yeah,
don't understand how tough it is to bring inflation from the path to hyperinflation in which Argentina was going to a path of disinflation. And I understand, obviously, the first one, by the way, the first one that acknowledges that inflation needs to continue to be reduced is Milei.
oh yeah, yeah. I mean, it's just the same way, when the plane lands on the runway, it doesn't stop immediately. You've got to,
Absolutely. It's just
yeah,
think about this. This is just like imagine you're in a transatlantic in the middle of
yeah,
the ocean, and there's been a captain that has gone full throttle and has decided to put all systems go and lead the transatlantic forward, and then you jump in and try to change course. You don't do it like this. You don't do it in a second. It takes a very, very
yeah,
significant effort.
yeah. And he still doesn't have a lot. He still doesn't really have a friendly, legislature. So
That's the other thing. But
yeah,
but
he can't
but
abolish the central bank
so
if he
that's
wanted
that's
to.
that's to me is the key thing is to put in context all the achievements, considering all of the limitations that
Yeah,
Mr. Millet had, and all the barriers implemented and by politicians that wanted to continue spending. Remember that the governors of many provinces were actually demanding much more spending. Hmm?
yeah, they were, and of course, if you look at the graph, I mean, a graph that for example, the Argentine peso against the euro, you go back to 2022, it was 233. About the time Milei took office, it was around, it was a little
Hmm.
more than, I mean, it was a, well, it was about 900. Now it's about 1100, which isn't, or 10, it's about 1073, but which still is a little, still is some inflation, but not nearly what it was. Yeah. So,
Yeah, I mean uh, it's it's truly unfortunate that people that finally see an administration that is implementing policies that are pro market, that are driven to restore an absolutely atrocious situation of the economy. It is, I find it truly, truly sad that these people just decide to sort of, I don't know what benefit do you get out of being so disingenuous? Because to be, one of the things that for me is disheartening, Chris, is, I mean, what do you get out of this? No, what do you get out of presenting the view that Javier Milei, for some stupid reason, is printing money like there's no tomorrow when it's factually incorrect, and when you can actually do a good service by understanding what
yeah.
the central bank has inherited? What do you get out of that? Are you making a sort of fifth column type of policy to bring back Peronism and to support the left wing policies? I just don't understand this. I just don't understand why, when there's empirical evidence of success, somebody that is allegedly Austrian does not look at the base effect and the chained effect of money supply. We know it in the United States. You know it in the UK. We know it. You know that in 2020, you massively increase money supply. And in 2021, money supply is going to continue to grow simply by the chained effect of central bank, commercial banks, lending, etc., and government spending. So you need to be, I don't know, more. I mean, and it's and the what to me to be fairly honest, Chris, is shocking. Is that it's so easy to explain. Is that you say, hey, you know, if you inherit a central bank, if you inherit a business that has $25 billion of debt, okay,
Yeah.
you don't start in the first month with profits that are going to lead to zero net debt to EBITDA. Huh? Everybody understands that. So why is anybody simply just not understanding? Not. I mean, it's very. Of course, they do
Yeah.
understand. It's simply being disingenuous.
Yeah. What do you mean when you say remunerated debt?
Okay,
People out there may
think
not
about
know
this.
exactly what.
Think about this. The central bank prints money. Okay, the central bank is issuing currency. Okay, however, the central bank's reserves, dollars, etc., are diminishing, depleting rapidly. Okay, so what does the central bank do in order to continue to finance government deficit and government spending? By and try to diffuse or try to limit the short-term inflationary impact. It issues bonds to the public, to investors, at a very high rate, huge rate, 13, 14%, very quick, very, very, very high rates. Therefore, the what it is basically doing is in entering into a debt, and its reserves, instead of being a central bank's reserves are always positive. No, the central bank always has something. No, so it's entering into negative net reserves, i.e., it owes money to the public. When those bonds mature, the central bank, what it does is then issues currency to repay it. Okay, so basically what it does is that in order to finance a bloated deficit spending from the government, it on the one hand, it finances that deficit spending directly and immediately, high inflation, 25.5%. And another part is financed through the banking channel by issuing bonds that are going to be repaid later with very high rates. So, a few months later, when those bonds mature, the central bank needs to continue to issue money. This is the key, is to understand that negative net reserve level and that amount of remunerated debt is a time bomb of future money supply growth, regardless of what the government does. So what this person that published this tweet should have done is to say, okay, what has been money supply growth in 2024, and what was the inheritance of remunerated central bank debt? Okay, put them all together, boom. There's been virtually no money supply growth in Argentina in 2024. Very easy.
Okay, so it's almost like it's a promise to grow the money supply later.
It is exactly that is a perfect explanation, Chris. Yeah,
Yeah, is that also what the leaks are?
that is what the leaks are.
Yeah.
The passes, those things.
Yeah, and if for people who are listening, it's a leak is LELIQ. So that's
Exactly.
it's just a term they came up with down there. Yeah, I do. I do wonder about some of these. Yeah, yeah. I mean, for example, in Milei's first 6 months, public debt grew from 370 billion to 442 billion. I think maybe he's got dollar signs, but I think he's maybe expressing these in pesos and not dollars. So
Yeah, no, the level of debt of the economy, again, remember that, again, let's go back to the inheritance, okay?
yeah,
One of the huge inheritance of the Milei government was that the previous administration lost arbitrage against those that they nationalized, and they had to repay about $10 billion of expropriated assets. No, so
yeah,
the increase in debt is logical because at the beginning you get a big slump in revenues, so you have to immediately reduce the level of spending, but also you have to assume a lot of the financial commitments that were already taken by the previous administration. That's one of the things, for example, that tends to happen in many occasions. If you look at, for example, in 2011 in Spain, the Spanish government, when it arrived, found that there was an extra 3 points of GDP of debt that were not accounted for. And we need to take into account all those things. When there's a change of administration from a socialist administration to a conservative administration, socialist administrations always, ahead of an election, are going to use all of the mechanisms of the state to spend more than they actually can and get more indebted than they actually can. So in order to uh, so if they lose the election, as they were expected to, by the way, if they lose the election, the next administration inherits a new amount of debt already committed, and if they win the elections, they can continue printing money.
yeah. That's
And if
about
you
right.
look at debt, let me check the last figures of debt in Argentina, because I think it's important also to see not what happened in the first 6 months, but what has happened in the entire 2024. Hmm?
Yeah, yeah. It's been pretty. Yeah, the entire 2024. We're looking, at about 13 months now. So it's been a
Yeah. So the evolution of public indebtedness, yeah, here it is. The level of public debt slumps in Argentina after a historic surplus, and this matters more than it looks. And it says here, country risk. Yeah, okay. So debt to GDP in Argentina has gone in this period. Let me just get this a little bit larger.
yeah, debt to GDP. That's probably more important
Yeah,
than
debt to GDP
yeah,
in Argentina went from, in December it was 99.5%, and in November it was 45%. So debt to GDP has come down dramatically in this period.
yes. Well, this is also due to the fact that the economy has become a lot more productive under his presidency. I mean, he's gotten rid of
Absolutely.
these regulations. Housing is there's more housing available.
Yeah.
Fired a bunch of government employees. Also said that a bunch of government employees who were at home had to come in, and a lot of them quit as a result. So yeah, yeah. There's so much progress here. I don't know how we can just it does seem unfairly critical. Yeah, and of course he brings up the
I
reality.
can, it's comical from the left to talk about the
Yeah,
negatives of the Millet first year, because they left an
yeah,
economy that was completely destroyed, and
yeah. It
it's
was.
and
Yeah,
it's disingenuous from the right and from libertarians to not recognize the improvements.
Yeah, there's always this tendency among libertarians to try to sacrifice the good on the altar of the perfect. I mean,
Yeah, but the problem is that there's no such thing as perfect, and when they sacrifice the good, they achieve nothing.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and you know, he did campaign on abolishing the central bank, which realistically he can't do with a
No,
Congress
no,
as
but
hostile
hey,
as it is.
but he did campaign on abolishing the central bank,
Yeah,
and he never said, and I dare anyone to say to find the quote. He never said he would do it in the first year.
yeah,
Never.
yeah. And I don't know. I don't even know how. Milei is doing so many things that have never been done before too. I don't know any country that's ever really abolished its central bank. It's not like you can just, you know,
Well, Ecuador did it. Well, didn't abolish the central bank, but but dollarized the economy
yeah,
entirely.
yeah. The cliche. Rome wasn't built in a day. It goes the other way. Rome, you can't tear down Rome in a day either. It's a
Exactly. Rome wasn't built in a day, and you can't destroy the Star Wars with the way that you see that you can't destroy the Death Star, like
yeah,
you see in the Star Wars movie, because
yeah,
that doesn't happen.
yeah.
Physics
It
works.
seems like it seems like to me, Saifedean thinks that Milei should have just defaulted on the debt. I mean, Milei has also refused to default on the public debt, which would have been the Rothbardian solution to finally free his countrymen from eternal debt slavery.
No, I think that is a very also disingenuous
Yeah,
thing, because you say, okay, no, just default on your debt and everything is going to be fine. Well, tell that to the public that would have seen uh, a bank run immediately. No, no,
yeah,
I think that Millet is doing what should be
yeah.
done.
Yeah, it's just the same way, if you tried to abolish Social Security in America after you have all these people who paid into it, it's not. I'd love to get rid of the system, but you're not going to. But you've got to figure out some way, at least to,
Yeah,
give what these people agreed to. You can't just go, because when you're defaulting on your debt, you're basically going back on your word. I mean,
yeah.
which is
No,
unfortunate.
you also have to remember that there are more rational ways of achieving the same thing without thinking that everything has to be done in a month. Because also you also have to remember that um, running a country means uh, not just achieving what seems to be perfect for somebody that is not going to see the negatives of the policy. It means getting the best possible option for everybody in the country that will see the side effects of those policies. Hmm? And the side
Yeah,
effects of those policies have been mitigated drastically. So in a way that I remember that a lot of people from the libertarian perspective were saying, well, Argentina will have a huge crisis, very, very short term, but then it will get a lot better. Phenomenal. Well, why don't you recognize the achievements then without getting into a much larger slump?
yeah. I don't know if you paid much attention to it, but what did some of the countries in the former Warsaw Pact do when they were suddenly, after the Berlin Wall fell? Because some of them did a really good job at, you know, privatizing their systems, and others didn't quite do so good a job. I don't know if there's any lessons to be learned from those experiences.
I think it's very, very different, because
Yeah,
the countries that left the Soviet Union
yeah,
started with almost a clean slate. Hmm?
yeah,
They had all the options to privatize, to strengthen the productive sector, to start delivering growth and providing improvement for citizens, creating currencies that actually had some level of support globally, a support from the financial system, etc. I think that it's very, very different with Argentina. Is that uh, I would you need to think of Argentina as a country that had inherited, that Milei had inherited an economy that was on on a fast pace to Venezuela.
Yeah.
Remember that inflation went from 10% per month to 20% per month very, very quickly. It didn't happen just like that. Remember that the enormous imbalances that we have talked about were built in 4 years, no? So so if I had to make a comparison with the former Soviet Union countries, I would say that you would have to think of the Argentine situation as
Yeah.
if those former Soviet Union countries had uh, become independent, but with the enormous downside of the uh, worthless currency of the Soviet Union.
Yeah, true. I mean, really, what Milei is doing has never been done before. It's not. There's no.
It's never been done before. That's the other thing,
Yeah,
is that at least people, the only thing that I don't ask this from the left, but I ask from libertarians, I ask from conservatives to at least acknowledge the inheritance. It's like
yeah,
in some cases it looks like Millet just arrived, like, I don't know, like I mean, think about this. Everybody in the United States understands there's going to be a monumental task for the Trump administration to bring down the deficit from 6% to 2%, and that will still be a deficit. And it's going to be a monumental task to bring inflation from 2.7% to minus 2%. Everybody understands that. However, they seem to expect that in Argentina, you're going to go from $12 billion of negative net reserves, $25 billion hole in the central bank, monster deficit, economic slump, and 25% inflation, and you're going to solve it all in 12 months. I'm reading every day in economic papers and in articles what a monumental task it is going to be for Scott Bessent, and that we need to give him 4 years to rein in the public finances of the United States. Yet people in some kind of science fiction fantasy are expecting Milei to inherit a much worse economy, that was on the path to Venezuela,
yeah,
and to achieve perfect results immediately.
yeah. We're not going to achieve the perfect results immediately. If we ever do, it's a So yeah, and I don't think Saifedean acknowledges either that dollars and other things are already being used for a lot of transactions. I mean,
Yeah,
people will buy cars in dollars. People use. I mean, it's
yeah,
the economy there is already somewhat dollarized just because people
absolutely it is. Yes,
used it. They you
absolutely.
tip them
That's
in dollars,
why,
you have to get dollars. Yep.
absolutely, that's why Milei's plan to make a clean dollarization, in which
Yeah,
basically what you basically do in effect is to allow the US dollar to be the sort of the co-currency with the Argentine peso for official
yeah,
purposes, is a very good way of making things actually be uh, realistically, mm, matching what the economy is already.
yes, yeah. He's and also we scroll down here. Says Milei is sowing the seeds for currency crises in the future. He says he's raised his taxes significantly, which I don't quite understand. And then he says,
This is also
eager to
untrue.
get an IMF bailout, which I don't buy either. I just, yeah,
This is also untrue. It's basically
yeah,
just, uh, you know, the first thing, again, it is exceedingly disingenuous to say that Milei has increased taxes when he has reduced inflation, because the biggest tax is the inflationary tax. And you
yes,
also have to remember that many of the taxes that citizens and businesses pay in Argentina are a direct percentage over the price that is being paid. Therefore, the government was benefiting in its tax receipts from inflation and collecting way more as inflation rose. So you are directly reducing taxes. And now, in 2025, he is going to reduce 90% of the taxes of the country. Furthermore, the idea that he is creating a currency crisis makes no sense the moment that the official peso and the real market rate of the peso actually match. So, you used to go around Buenos Aires or any province in Argentina for that matter, and be flooded by people trying to uh, buy dollars from you at a 100%, 150% difference to the official exchange rate. Nobody exchanged dollars in at the official rate. You would literally go down the street from the hotel to a corner. Somebody would say, "Hey, we buy dollars," and they would give you 150% difference. Now both are matching, so you cannot have a currency crisis when the official and the real market rate are converging. Furthermore, you cannot have a currency crisis when the government is taking decisive actions to offset the time bomb inherited with fiscal policies.
Yeah, yeah. Scroll down here also is that apparently the shipping off the gold to London,
Yeah,
which has happened. I don't know what the gains are expected. That I kind of agree with that. I wouldn't ship off my gold to London either, but but there must be
yeah.
some reason for this.
Mhm.
It's yeah. I don't understand what's well. Yeah. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of understanding what's going on here. Just
I don't think that. I mean, I find it surprising, to be fairly honest,
yeah, and
that.
he's also still got a lot of hostile governors and people who there's been threats of coups. It's
Oh, absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely, absolutely.
yeah. Yeah, Daniel. One thing I can ask you too is did you have this is was a while ago. What did you think about Mondino no longer being in the cabinet? Deanna Mondino. She seemed like she's really a solid free market credentials, so I naturally wondered about that.
Diana Mondino is a tremendous woman. I have all respect for her. I think she's great. She is great. But one has to remember that there are a number of things that are unnegotiable in the Milei administration, no? And one of them is the support for Israel.
Yeah.
So I was shocked when I read that Argentina had voted with other countries against Israel. No, uh, I did not understand why that happened, and it may have been a mistake, but you cannot. This is the problem, and you can also understand that this is the problem mm, with so many conservative or center right governments, is that conservative and center right governments don't have the luxury of making mistakes, because you make a mistake and everybody's going to be, literally going for your throat. Um, and we see it from tweets like the one that you mentioned at the beginning. No, so I don't know. I think it was an unfortunate situation, but it was important that the Milei administration left a very clear message that it was unquestionably with Israel and with the United States in international matters.
Well, this was more a vote, to condemn Cuba, I believe, that was on the final
Of
day.
course,
Yeah.
to start with,
Okay. Or
and
condemning the
to
embargo
start
against.
with, because you basically cannot sign as Argentina a manifesto requesting the end of a blockade to Cuba that doesn't exist. There is no blockade on Cuba. Cuba has sanctions against some of the leaders that are stealing money from their people and that are using the money that comes to the island from tourism and from other
Yeah.
activities to become obscenely rich. Okay, so it's again exceedingly disingenuous to um, use the term that the left uses with Cuba, which is, oh, but Cuba's doing badly because it has a blockade. There is no blockade. Cuba has more than 27 bilateral trade agreements. The United States is one of the biggest trade partners of Cuba. Cuba has trade agreements with all of the major economies in the world, including an enormous level of subsidies and literally free money support from China, from Russia, from even Spain, or from Germany. So it is wording is very important to you cannot go in any shape and this goes with the element that I think is also critical element of Milei's policy, which is the cultural battle. You cannot just go out and sign a manifesto saying that there is a blockade on Cuba, because there isn't, because there is empirically no blockade.
Yeah. Well, true. I get that. Yeah. Do you think? Which government do you think Milei hates more, the Cuban government or the Venezuelan government?
It's the same. The
Yeah.
Cuban government,
Yeah.
the Venezuelan government is a puppet of the current Venezuelan government. Mr. Maduro is a puppet of Cuba.
Yeah, and they also have other puppets too, that where they've been supporting people like the Shining Path, or
Yeah,
I think they've got some ties to FARC and some other
yeah, of course they
groups
have.
who are
Of course.
just causing trouble everywhere. It's
Yeah,
pretty much
absolutely.
Daniel, I don't think you also have to realize too, there's a lot more confidence in Argentina, and the most remarkable thing about Milei is that he's an economist, a very smart economist, a very well read economist, but he also knows how to go out and talk to people.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
think that there's two elements about Milei that are key. Number one is that he is an incredibly well very he's a I'm going to show you a book that
yeah,
people absolutely need to purchase. It's in Spanish, unfortunately.
yes,
This one: Capitalism, Socialism, and the Neoclassic Trap. This book by Javier Milei
yeah,
is an absolute must read, and shows that he is one of the best economists in the region, if not one of the best economists in the world. This is a key element. The other one is this one, Javier Milei, Mi Pensamiento Político, El Camino de la
yeah,
Libertad, the path to liberty. These two show, number one, you need to be an exceedingly good economist to manage the situation of a country like Argentina. Number two, you need to constantly fight the cultural battle,
yeah,
constantly be providing to people with ideological elements that defend freedom inexcusably.
yeah, yeah. He's got two books out there. Yeah, I don't know. I would assume maybe he's just so busy, but I'd assume somebody'd be calling him and saying, "Hey, can we translate this?" It's
Oh, they should be. Yeah.
yeah, because he's definitely become a man in demand now. But Daniel, I also think the fact that he was the lead singer of a Rolling Stone cover band is why he goes
Yeah.
out there. I mean, I always say he's just like that's why I call it rock star liberalism. He's
Mm.
going out there and just, he's playing the crowd just like he's a band leader when he speaks.
Mhm.
It's and
Absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely.
and there's a lot, and we've got a lot of amazing economists out there, but they just don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
It's,
Mhm.
yeah, Daniel. Also, true. Is it true also that there's a very long Spanish liberal tradition that I've been learning about? People like Cervantes and the School of Salamanca. It's really a pretty remarkable history from what I hear.
One can actually say that the
Yeah.
Austrian School of Economics should not be called the Austrian School of Economics, but the Salamanca School of Economics,
Yes.
because the first scholars to write extensively about the role of government and money supply growth in inflation, the elements of control of budgets, and the role of fiscal policy in making people poorer or richer. Tremendous. It's a tremendous school that everybody should read about. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Because I've heard they actually influenced our own founding fathers, because a lot
Oh,
of them are also
absolutely, they
very
did.
well read in Spanish.
If you
Ja-
think about this, if you think about it, a lot that you can read in the founding fathers' vision about a society that defends itself from the tyranny of government, which is ultimately the entire constitution, beautiful, of the United States, is a top is a bottom up defense of civil society and freedom from government. All the amendments. This is absolutely beautiful reading. No, but if you think about it, all of that is actually uh, directly actually brought and drinking or getting influence from the school of Salamanca, which is which is phenomenal considering that these were scholars, these were Catholic Church scholars that belonged to the church, and that were saying very, very radical things for the time. No.
Yeah, they were very radical at the time. What was the School of Salamanca exactly?
School of Salamanca is a group of scholars that include Juan de Mariana and a number of others.
Yeah,
And
Mariana, yeah.
Salamanca is a town in Spain that had a tremendous, vibrant university life. Many of these scholars were teachers, and they were advisors to government in some shape or
Yeah.
form. Hmm.
But what
So
what
no,
time?
sorry.
What time?
The Escuela de Salamanca
Yeah.
is comes from the period is the
Looks like
you could
mostly
start the
1500s and 1600s. Looks like, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and they were certainly very much
I'm
influenced
trying to
by
get
Islam.
an exact timeline of
Yeah.
the but
Yeah.
between the first group of Salamanca scholars range between 1520 around the period of 1520 to 1600.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a
It goes between in the 1500 period.
And that was really very much a golden age for Spain, because Spain started, exploring the New World and colonizing these.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah. Why do what do you think? Why didn't these ideas take hold more, especially in the colonies, or in Spain itself?
I think that in general they did take hold, and they were the basis of what
Yeah.
things like why do we have an independent central bank? no, or why we decided to have an independent central bank instead of having a government body that took care of monetary policy. Things like the the separation of powers, the generalized view of political corruption, all these things that Francisco de Vitoria, Juan de Mariana, so many others, Juan de la Peña, so many great scholars were talking about. But there's tremendous levels of influence in what we consider the current democracies, no?
Yeah.
About the formation of prices, everything that has to do with fair taxation, private property, um, everything that has to do with understanding economic progress. All of that comes from that school.
Yeah. Do you think Adam Smith or the later Austrians read some of these
Yeah.
guys? Or
No, absolutely they did. No,
yeah,
and they acknowledge it, and they acknowledge it. You have it
yeah,
in the writings of Frederick von Hayek and Mises. Both of them cite quite frequently the elements of the school of Salamanca. Yeah.
yeah, that might be a whole nother discussion. We could talk about the Spanish liberal tradition. And of course, I knew Cervantes was a part of that too. Who wrote, of course, wrote the book Don Quixote, which is one of the most famous novels in the history of the world.
Yeah.
So, what are the prospects for your country, Daniel? What do you think is going to happen over there? Since
Well, what we're having in Spain currently
Mhm.
is a situation, and what we have is a government that is doing exactly what the government in Argentina was doing when the Peronists were in power, and is a government that is not generating any level of real growth apart from massive increase in debt and using very similar tools to other socialist governments, which is bloating GDP with public expenditure plus a very significant increase in immigration. None of those two
Yeah.
elements are positive. So it's basically just bloating GDP with public sector expenditure.
What kind of how much of an impact is Milei having on the rest of the Spanish speaking world?
Oh, huge, huge,
Yeah,
enormous.
I think they all know who he is now.
Yeah, of course they do. No, he's in countries all over Latin America and in Spain.
Yeah.
He's more popular than many of the local politicians.
Yeah, I mean, and he's. I mean, the only Argentine that's more well known than he is Messi.
That's true.
Yeah,
That's true. That is very true.
yeah. I don't know if Messi ever dips his toes. He probably just stays out of it.
Mm.
Uh, because he had a speech over there a while back, and was that pretty well received? Or Milei gave a speech in Madrid, I believe. Yeah,
No, no, huge, huge.
yeah,
I mean, exceedingly popular. I can tell you because I every time that I publish a video in my channel about what Millet is doing, it's tremendous level of interest.
I'm realizing now that maybe politicians are become more popular outside their countries because you can love them, but they can't really do anything in your country.
No, no, I think that the reason why people love Millet is
Yeah,
because of what you said before, is that he explains things in such clear terms
yeah,
that nobody can say that he is trying to. I think that it's basically the first president of Argentina in many years that has told people things the way that they are exactly. No,
yeah. Yeah, I think he's bringing about, as Ayn Rand said, a philosophical re-education has to happen, and I hope it does happen.
absolutely, I agree with that.
What country do you think where another Milei could appear? Well, I guess is maybe Chile, maybe.
I don't know. It should come. The logic would say maybe from Chile, but maybe from Colombia. I don't know,
Yep.
but it should come certainly. Mhm.
Yeah, and I don't think any of us even saw this coming 3 or 4 years ago, did we? It's just so amazing.
Absolutely, absolutely. You're
It,
absolutely
it,
right.
yeah, and so it is. I've said it is in some ways it's like a capitalist and democratic version of the Bolshevik Revolution. I think it could be that profound. I guess the
Yeah,
big question is, will he have any impact on the academy? That's because they're just as bad in South America as they are as in America and everywhere else. They just
yeah,
because you were around when you saw the Berlin Wall fall. We didn't think we'd still be arguing with socialists now, right?
yeah. Well, the thing is that socialism, when the Berlin Wall fell, understood perfectly that they could not go again with the communist rhetoric. So socialism decided to adopt different aspects or different themes that everybody would relate to, no, like ecology
Yeah.
or feminism, things like that. Which, by the way, ecology, feminism are all free market ideas, no? Mm?
Oh yeah.
However, so basically, socialism, communism disguise itself under those umbrellas in order to impose interventionism. And that's what we're getting from the climate
Yeah.
accords and everything that are basically used as subterfuge to implement social control.
Yeah, they're just looking for different ways to control. It seems like there's always, and the coronavirus restrictions and all that
Yeah,
stuff.
absolutely.
And it, it's been great having you on here, Daniel. I think you said you had an hour, so I'm gonna good time to wrap up. That's you have anything else to say before we go? It's been great having you back on. So
It's been an absolute pleasure. I just give Millet some slack because he has
oh yeah,
done a tremendous job.
looking at your books back there, I'm just thinking I would love to see what's on Milei's bookshelves.
Yeah,
I mean, that guy is so well read too. I mean, you
a lot
just
of similar things.
quoting so many different people and just he's learned from. Yeah. Well, okay, Daniel. Where can we find you out there?
Well, it's easy to find me. Huh? So you can just Google Daniel Lacalle, and you
Yeah.
can get my English Twitter account, which is dlacalle underscore IA. You can get my
Yeah.
YouTube channel in English. You can get
Yeah.
my website in English. And if you want them in Spanish as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff there too. Yeah, I just discovered your other Twitter account recently. Okay, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, go buy my novel Escape from the Village, check out my Substack, go to buy me a coffee to support the show. Thank you, Daniel Lacalle. I'm Chris Baker. Buy my novel Escape from the Village from major booksellers online. Go to escapevillage.com. Subscribe to the Substack. Go to fountainheadforum.substack.com. Support the forum. Go to buymeacoffee.com/fountainheadforum. Thank you.